1001, it's a mother and son story. It's about Inez. She's a young woman who's just come out of Rikers and quickly reunites with her son who's in the foster care system. And because she's afraid that she might lose him again once he's moved to a new foster home, she decides to just impulsively take him and rebuild their life together. So you see them set out on this journey to bring their family back together in a New York City that's changing around them. It is a story about a family versus a city. I think in addition to that, it's a story about mother and son relationships. It's a story about dynamics between men and women, and particularly with Black women feeling like they fight so hard to protect both their families and their communities at large, yet they're so overlooked. I think this movie is also about generational cycles, the trauma and challenges that Black communities have faced over time, and just how hard it is just across generations to overcome that. And within the movie, when the movie starts, we're in 90s New York, which is at the tail end of a very rough period for the city, and it would have especially been a rough period for Harlem. The period where we begin the movie is very different than the period where we end it. I think the costuming, obviously that's really fun, digging into the 90s. The baggy pants, the Timbs, like just all those little staples that not only represent the era, but also just like what was hip in New York. I think the way Inez dresses, she's definitely indicative of 90s women, but in the 2000s, even with Terry and like the huge white t-shirts, Sean John, like just things that were like staples of the era were really fun to integrate. And it's so weird because it's like a lot of those trends are coming back now, but they really were staples of that time. I think music, it really plays a huge role in the film, not only in giving audiences a taste of what it really is like in New York City. New York City, you walk down the street, you're getting so many different flavors of different types of people, personalities, and also music is all around you, especially in a neighborhood like Harlem. Like if you get off the train and you just walk one block, you're gonna hear like, 4 generations of Black music and more. You're just getting all these eras stacked on top of each other as people just appreciate and blast it in the neighborhood. So I really wanted the film to feel immersed like that because I really wanted people to feel like this is the energy of what New York feels like. And by the end of the movie, as it gets quieter, kind of feel that being washed away a little bit. But I think there's also a commentary in it, particularly about like, generational cycles, both the tragedies and triumphs that each generation has to overcome within Black communities. And it's so interesting because you hear that in our music, the way our music kind of like is in call and response to each other. So, you have one record that might have coming out like back in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s just to be sampled and reinterpreted in the 90s and the 2000s as we hear it in the movie. When the casting Inez, I knew that the role was going to be very demanding for any actress, and I would have loved a number of actresses to play, this character just in terms of so many people I'm a fan of. I think the only hesitation for me is I really wanted some truthfulness to come through. I really wanted to feel like the person playing this role really had a rawness and an authentic representation of what a New York City woman is and an underprivileged woman is. I didn't want any piece of that to feel performative. I didn't want to have to worry about weird things that just like, accent stuff and all that. Like I just wanted somebody just through and through, you believed her. You believed that this was her experience. And I saw that with Tiana. It wasn't until Tiana's tape that I saw somebody who had that combination, not only the talent and depth of a really great actress, but also somebody who reflected the heart and soul of who this woman is in the real world. I think I could tell that Tiana, either she knows this woman, has been this woman at some point in life, and therefore she's in the best position to tell this woman's story. It came from a real place of empathy, being with her instead of like looking down at her. It's interesting casting Will. I think originally in my head I saw somebody that might be actually a bit younger, but it just made way more sense to go with somebody at Will's age and just his physical presence. You know, you really feel the wisdom of a man with him. I think not only is he an incredible actor, I think looking at his original audition, I think he gave one of the performances that was just like, it was very unique from everybody else, and I think that immediately caught my attention. I think in addition to that, I felt like he had the type of presence that Tiana and Inez could submit to. You really had to believe for this woman who is such a force that in the presence of this man, she would be able to really like, you know, be her most vulnerable self and feel like, you know, kind of quiver in his presence a little bit, just like in that type of love dynamic. But I think outside of the way he related to Inez, it was really important that he also knew how to relate to Terry, somebody who could have this tough presence, but also have a layer to him that could be very vulnerable and have the type of fatherly presence that Terry needed. I definitely think that Tiana and Will being parents, I think that helped a lot. I think Tiana in particular, I think she was able to bring a lot of the warmth, her being like that motherly energy to her partners, you know, working with Aaron and Avon and Josiah. I think that for Will, he's a parent as well, and so I think that helped him. But I also think he actually had really great parents. I think because he had a great father, he knew how to be a great father to Terry and to the actors that he was performing alongside, and that was actually insightful for me because I would have thought the opposite, that somebody who didn't have a father figure would relate more to this character and therefore be able to connect in a certain way. But I think I was like pleasantly surprised and informed, and the character benefited tremendously from that. To me, Josiah represented Terry fully actualized. And Josiah, I think he always tickles me because I think I really love the way he was able to take on the spirit of this young New York man because he's not from the city. And so I think he was able to really represent Terry fully actualized because he soaked up everything of this character's life experience up until the moment when we meet him again in 2005. And I think even in the subtlest moments, you know, just like he could be so stoic, but just like the look behind his eyes would tell you everything. So he was really such a pleasure to work with, and I appreciated, again, just the truthfulness that came with him because I think like Tiana, it's just like I really wanted to feel with all these characters just like true reflections of my experience as a New Yorker and somebody who grew up in the inner city of it, and I didn't want anything to feel like a caricature. I think Inez's relationship with Terry, it's very complicated, and I think it reflects a lot of people's dynamics in real life with their moms or their sons. I think in particular, for me, their relationship, it was a reflection of so many people I know in real life that struggle in the dynamics because the mom, for whatever reason, she was not able to either be around physically, emotionally, or both. And in the case of Inez, she's a young 20-something. She would have had Terry, you know, in her teenage years, and I think like she's still figuring herself out. I feel like it was especially important to see Inez's humanity as a mother because I think we over idealize our parents so much, and we don't give them room to just be a human that's figuring out life while they're trying to create a better life for us. So I think my hope is that within the dynamic that Terry and Inez have to overcome, that people will understand their parents better and be able to heal a little bit more and know that if I did make mistakes, it wasn't because I didn't love you. I think family is beyond bloodlines. I think, you know, there's the family you're born into, but there's also the family you choose, which can be an incredibly beautiful and powerful thing. I think what family comes down to is love in not only a sense of a feeling or an attachment to another human being, but how you choose to show up for them. And I think we see that in the film. Like, each of these characters are challenged in different ways to show up for the people that they love, and in addition to just receiving everything that person has to give them. I think the characters in the movie, they go through enormous obstacles. I think it's really a family against the city. You know, I think that the New York City is really the villain in this case. So I think just over the trajectory of seeing two mayors in office, you know, we start in the 90s very hopefully with Mayor Giuliani coming into office. But by the bookend of the end of his time in office in 2001, you see that a lot of the positive changes that happened in New York end up coming at the family's expense. When it came to like recreating New York, my production designer, Sharon Lemofsky, I think our collaboration was key, as well as my collaboration with Melissa Vargas, who did costume, and then Eric Yu, who did cinematography. But I think in the way Sharon and I talked a lot about New York, there was so many like specific things in terms of the exterior backdrops, like New York, the way it loses its individuality. You can even just see that in storefronts, us going from individual mom and pop shots that, you know, everybody can have the slice of the city, into big chains that you can get literally anywhere else in the world. It's just like, and so I think New York is becoming a lot more sterilized, and I think by establishing that very viscerally in the beginning of the movie, you can feel it by the end. Sabine Hoffman, who was our editor, I think she was really instrumental in helping me find the film, because it's like, I think coming out of production, it's like I know what I wrote, but I still kind of needed some space, and so that was the beauty of our collaboration, is that she was able to interject a level of objectivity into the way we were just like looking at the film and shaping it, beyond like me coloring it, not only with like what my expectations were coming in, but also just like the experiences of being on set. I think it's really important for a filmmaker to have a team that you can really trust their insight and trust the different point of views that they come with. So I think the balance that I had with Sabine was definitely very integral to the final structure of the film. In terms of producers, I think Hillman Grass, Sight and Scene, and Make Ready, you know, it was a great team to work with. I think in terms of the women producers on the team, Lena Waithe and Julie Lebedev, I think they were both really like pivotal to my journey, and just feeling like I had the support that I needed. I think Lena, she was always just like, you know, one call away, and you know, if I ever needed any feedback from the screenplay to getting through production and all that stuff, she was always very supportive, and you know, very like straight shooter when it came to like trying to help me hash out whatever needed to be hashed out. And I think Julie has always been just like so hands-on and such a solid partner across the board. It was nice to make this as my debut film because in so many ways, the coming of age of both these characters, Inez, she goes through her journey, but also Terry, you know. I think I related to it because it reflects my coming of age as well in a number of ways. And so I think that just to begin my journey with feature films from such a personal place, I think that's like really special, and I'm happy that I got to like do that now. I think to win the grand prize at Sundance was incredible. I mean, I think when I first got the award, I was just like, is this really happening? You know, I think it was such an honor, and I'm so excited for the platform that Sundance gave the film, and then the recognition they gave us with this title specifically. And yes, to be in a class of all these films that not only are just by filmmakers that I really admire, but these are films that have touched culture, you know, have had huge cultural impacts in their own way, and have their own place in the canon. So I think for this film to have that type of association as it begins its own life, I'm excited to see where it goes. A movie never feels finished, so I certainly don't feel like I finished it. I think I'm proud that I made my first one. I think in the ways that people have responded to it so far, I think that's the biggest triumph for me. Like, just people really understanding what this movie was about and feeling touched by it and feeling like it represented their story, or they learned something else about life through their experience of watching this film. So I think that's the biggest win for me, is the way it's resonated with people. But I think for me as a filmmaker, yeah, I think this movie is an unfinished movie to me. So, you know, I just accept that and appreciate that it is what it wanted to be. I think the film for me, it is both a love letter to New York, but also a breakup letter. I think part of what drew me to tell the story in the first place was realizing that as the city changed and communities of color in particular were targeted, I was like, oh, okay, you know, how should I feel about the fact that this city that I love so deeply doesn't love me? And then I think in beginning the journey of just telling the story and doing the research and digging deeper into just what the history of that relationship has been between the Black community and New York City, I was like, oh, the city never loved us. You know, it's not that it just doesn't love us now. And so I think for me, and just feeling so betrayed by this place that has always been my home and, you know, it's a part of my DNA, but to feel so like hurt by it, I think, yeah, it just, to me, I think this was in many ways like kind of like a farewell letter, you know, maybe not forever, but certainly for now. I just felt very hurt by New York City and feel like, yeah, it got some splaining to do. There's so much in a film like this. It is very rich in layers and textures. But I do hope that, especially when it comes to like the trope of like angry Black women, you know, that Black women have a lot of ish to be angry about. You know, I think if you don't see Inez's experience in this film and see how frustrating it is to live life, you know, along a path like that, then you're just not a human being. You know, so I think that's something that's important for me. I think having compassion and fully seeing the humanity of Black women is important to me.
The character Lucky was attractive to me because of the father figure aspect. And the movie kind of feels like it's in 3 parts. You know, we have young Terry, we have 13-year-old Terry, and then we have 17-year-old Terry. And Lucky goes through that transition with them. And the father figure aspect of it, the mentorship, the male presence, even though Lucky's going through his own things, just got out of jail from being incarcerated. But, you know, he's the one shining light besides Inez, which played by Tiana Taylor, in Terry's life. And I was like, oh, I think, you know, me having a great father in my life, I can bring some of that essence to the role. Tiana is a force, and she's such a creative human being and so loving. And what really made the chemistry and the bond work to me was actually having dinner with her at her house and just seeing her heart for humanity and the love that she has for just being a creative artist. And so when we get on screen, those things vibe right away because I'm the same way. So it's been a pleasure. You have the Harlem Renaissance, there's so much history there. And, you know, Adam Clayton Powell, you know, and Malcolm X, they both have, you know, street signs and those things, and getting that rich culture and being in it and feeling New York in the summer. I always wanted to shoot a film in New York. And the other day, the transpo's taking me home and they have an open fire hydrant. So I say, hey man, can you stop the car? Can you stop the car? And I jump in the open fire hydrant, you know, just to get that feel of the city. So it's been beautiful. The whole collaborative effort, you know, we feel like you can feel it when something's special. Like there's something special about this film. And you can feel it when you're on set, and that's what I lean into. AV doesn't move on until she has what she wants. And, you know, by her being a director and a writer all at the same time, you see it on the page that you have written, and you've lived with this story in your mind. And then you see the actors bring it to life, and then you gotta marry what you want to see and what you're seeing in the present. You know, it takes a lot of work to do that, and I can see her processing it. And the one thing I love about her is that she creates a safe space. You know, I know that she got my back. If I'm not on the accent, she gonna correct me. If I'm, you know, feeling like, well, how's this going? She gonna come and comfort me. You know what I mean? So she's a good actor's director, and I love that about her, and I'm excited to see where she goes. It changes drastically, you know. Right now you see me with the gold tooth, you know, the chain on, you know, that's 95, that's Lucky, you know, he back, he out of jail, you know, he back on the block, it's Harlem, baby, I'm out here. But as time goes on and as men mature, things like this, they come off. You know, you start to take off the things that you really don't need, you know, so the gold tooth comes off, the chain comes off, you know, because he's maturing as a man as well. You know, he gets a job. He's working in construction. You know, he's trying to actually make a better life for for the three of them. And, you know, getting a job and saying, I'm gonna be there, getting married, taking those steps. So the arc, you see him transition. The environment that you grow up in, when you're a fighter and you struggled all your life, you know, all you know how to do is fight. So her being volatile is coming from her trying to survive, trying to understand, you know, and make out what she has. Even an apartment that she gets, you know, it's run down, you know what I mean? It's like a shack, you know, but she's trying to make the best of it. So a lot of those things, they just spill out, you know, and we see them as anger, hate, or whatever the case may be. Or, you know, some people may see it as the angry black woman, you know what I mean? But you're bringing your struggle, and when you don't have help and you don't have a place to let that energy out, it comes out as angry. It comes out as, what about me? You're really crying out. So a lot of times on Inez, she's just really crying out for help. I'll say it like this. Blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty makes you family. And I think the way Lucky looks at that situation is that it doesn't matter how Terry got there or why he got there. It is the loyalty that they have built that makes them a family. And when you want something so bad in life, sometimes you're willing to do anything to get it. And I think you see that. Inez wants a family. Lucky wants a family. Because she reminds him, you know, she said, you know, do you remember what it's like growing up without a father? So he knows what that's like, so he sees himself in Terry. Morals, manners, and willing to deal with the mess. You know, I think that's what makes art. You know, you gotta be willing to throw the paint on the wall and be vulnerable and not care about what people think. And I think that's what makes Lucky strong, because he doesn't care. You know, he cares, but he doesn't care. Everybody cares to a certain extent. But then you get to a place in your life where you like, I'm okay with me and being me. And me is good enough. And to me, that's art that makes Lucky strong, that will make, you know, anyone strong to accept who you are. You know, the good, the bad, the indifferent. You know, you can't deal with anything unless you accept where you are. I think if you want to see a love letter to New York, a love letter to France, a love letter to any city that you reside in, and you want to see human behavior and study human behavior and what it's like to make decisions, whether good or bad, and learn from it, then this is the film for you. And it's gonna be nostalgic. It's 95, you know, 2001. You know, we're what, 20 years removed from that time period. I mean, I really think this film is gonna be worth the ticket price.